everybody. Welcome into RS Andrews Go With The Flow. I am not Brandon Adams. I'm Connor Riley. I am filling in this week for Mr. Adams. He is away with his family this week. We send our thoughts and prayers to him and all of his loved ones there with the Adams family. But we still have our regular cast of characters this week. We've got our guest picker, Dari Payro, with RS Andrews. We've also got the usual band of misfits, Mike Griffith and Jeff Sintel, with us here as well. RS Andrews Go With The Flow. We picked the weekly games. There's a bunch of them this week. Conference championship week. Unfortunately, there was supposed to be a Georgia game this week, but that game has been canceled due to lack of numbers at Vanderbilt. At the time that this is being recorded, Georgia does not have a game yet. However, shortly, if Georgia does get a game, we will come in and add that game in there. But Mike, no Georgia game this week. 3 Georgia home games this year. What's your take on this, and what's your reaction to Georgia sort of getting the short end of the stick here?
Yeah, I didn't like the schedule when it came out, Connor. When you saw Vanderbilt at the end of the year, this is a high attrition sport, and that's a school that doesn't put a lot of priority on their football program. So right from the jump, seeing Vandy in that last game, knowing that there would be COVID protocol and the potential for teams to cancel, that didn't look good from the start. Vanderbilt did cancel out on the 5th, but let's face it, they wanted to play Tennessee. They wanted to play their senior day. They did play their senior day. And then they canceled on Georgia again. So that these are some questions that are going to be addressed during the offseason at spring meetings among athletic directors and presidents as far as accountability. Certainly the Georgia game in Jacksonville in jeopardy of being extended beyond 2023 already with Greg McGarity moving on. Obviously, Kirby Smart has made his feelings known about where he wants that game. That contract expires in 2023. I think this probably magnifies the change taking place with the new AD coming in. So those are a couple of the items that fall out. I hope Georgia gets this last game, Connor. I think it's really sad that Georgia had only 3 home games and played 6 times away from Sanford Stadium.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for the seniors, and I think the point you make there about Vanderbilt essentially playing Tennessee, getting its senior day, and then pulling the rug out there from Georgia's seniors, a little bit unfair there, though. I'm not surprised that you snuck in a Georgia, Florida, and Jacksonville there. So good on you for staying committed a bit. Jeff, big recruiting week this week. Does this, Georgia not having to play a game, trying to get a game on the schedule, does this, do you think, make it anything easier for Georgia in terms of managing the week? Or by the fact that they're trying to reschedule a game, does it make anything more different?
I don't think so. I think it's already kind of freed up a little bit by they're not making mad dashes for in-home visits and scurrying back and forth, trying to talk to everybody that's possible. I think the hands-off, no face-to-face interaction has kind of forced them to just be phone call warriors. I think as Kirby Smart said this week in his Monday presser that he's all out of ideas. He's all out of cleverness. He doesn't have a really cool red and black or white with gray trim sweater vest to break out on a Zoom connection to make sure all the families just get warm and good tidings about coming to play for Georgia. Just huge storylines abound for Georgia. For me, I think the biggest one is how in the world is Kirby going to find all that room underneath the tree to bring in, I think my count could go up to 21 possible early enrollees, 21 possible early enrollees for this class. The previous record, you guys are seeing this now. We've already had this up on Dog Nation for about a day or two. But the previous record for the most amount of early enrollees in a class was actually 13. So this one's going to go way, way north of that.
Yeah, and then Dari, as a Georgia fan, this Georgia team has been playing really well these last couple of weeks. Just obviously Georgia was going to blow out Vanderbilt. I believe the early line, 35, 40 points, depending on where you saw it. How disappointing as a fan is it to just not see these guys play once again, especially when they're playing well?
Yeah, I mean, it's more disappointing for the seniors. You know, I mean, they didn't get a lot of home games and they didn't get their final send-off. You know, I think that's tough. You know, like Mike said, I mean, Vandy, you know, they were selfish on their own. You know, they didn't want to come to Georgia, and then they went and played their own senior game on a, you know, in-state rival game, and then they called it quits. So, you know, definitely heart goes out for them. Hopefully Georgia, you know, they're definitely going to put the effort forth to make this happen, and hopefully they can get some leeway from the SEC to allow them to get someone from out of conference to come in here and give the seniors a proper send-off, man. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think we're all sort of rooting for a game to get there just because, at the very least, it gives us no more games to pick. This is RS Andrews Go With The Flow. I'm Connor Riley. of Mike Griffith, Jeff Sintel, Dari Payro. We also usually have Brandon Adams, but he is not here with us today. basically what we do. We go through, pick this week's slate of games. Usually the Georgia game is involved this week. Unfortunately, it is not. Hopefully they get a game scheduled and we can add it back in after the fact. But essentially we go through, we pick the games, tally up the scores, who's doing well, who's doing what. And after last week, boy, if you're watching our show and you actually have the courage to place numbers on our game, you did pretty well depending on who you went with. No losing weeks last week. Mike Griffith still in first place, another solid 5-3 weeks, 51-38 on the season, followed closely behind by Jeff Santella at 46-35. I've moved up to third now. I was immaculate last week, 8-0. I just gave out winners left and right, 48-41 on the season now, leaping ahead of Dari Pero at 46-43. And bringing things up, the Dog Nation Daily audience at 40-41. And Brandon Adams, who had another winning week, has turned things around here in the second half of the season. He now sits at 43-46. So conference championship week, huge week of games. College playoff berths are going to be decided. Alabama SEC championship game. A lot to talk about. Before we dive into that, I just want to say a thank you here to our sponsor, R.S. Andrews. All of this is made possible by our friends at R.S. Andrews. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. You can trust them to handle all of your systems around the house. We're on the brink of the holiday season, and it's nice to feel warm and toasty air from that heating system that works the way it is supposed to. If you're afraid it's not working the way it should, like it's currently not at my house, or if you have people coming over for the holidays and you're afraid it won't be as comfortable as they should be, get the peace of mind you deserve by getting your system tuned back up. Find R.S. Andrews at rsandrews.com. That'll set in motion the process for them to take very good care of you. A little more to satisfy you. They'll put a big smile on your face. That's what R.S. Andrews will do. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. So now, as we move into the week, let's start with the top-ranked team in the country, Alabama. They have been a covering machine as of late, and they are taking on the Florida Gators, coming off a loss outright last week. I will say everyone here on this panel predicted that Florida would not cover. Alabama is a 17-point favorite in the SEC championship game. This is the largest a favorite has been favored by in the SEC championship game since Alabama and Florida played in 2016. Mike, who do you have this week?
Yeah, I think you got to go with Alabama, Connor. I mean, as you said, they've been rolling everybody. They're going strong. Florida looks like they're coming apart at the worst time of year. Embarrassing loss for the Gators. Kyle Trask, 3 turnovers, his third pick six of the year, and then losing to a depleted LSU team that, was without their top 2 running backs, their starting secondary, and down to 54 players. So at home at that. So I'm going with Alabama to win this game big, 52-17.
Mr. Santell.
Alabama Crimson Tide. And hey, folks, for the record, I want to mention that I'm in second behind Mike Griffith, but I am missing 1 week worth of picks where I could have grabbed that lead. So we got an asterisk next to Mr. Griffith in his current standings lead. My winning percentage probably might be the best with all those fancy calculators out there. What you will also need a calculator for is how many points Bama is going to roll over Florida this week. No shoes are necessary. Did you see that stat this week that was proffered by ESPN? I think the highest rated quarterback season of all time goes to Mac Jones, not Baker Mayfield, not Justin Fields, not Kyler Murray, and definitely not Joe Burrow. Mac Jones. Bama, big over the Gators. That 17-point line is going to look like that slim lead Mike Griffith has on me currently in our Go With The Flow standings.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Alabama here. I just didn't mention Devontae Smith, but I think he's the Heisman Trophy winner this year. I think he's the best player in college football. I don't think Florida's going to be able to cover him all that well. You look at what Florida did last week. Yeah, they sat out Kyle Pitts, and I do think that affected the rhythm of their offenses a little bit. He'll be back this week. But, I mean, defensively, they gave up 37 points. Now, granted, one of those was on a pick six. But they gave up, 30 points to an offense that was starting a true freshman quarterback in his first career start. This defense is just not good enough. Alabama has covered, I believe, 7 or 8 straight consecutive games. All of those are double-digit lines. So give me Alabama to cover again here. The flow heavily on the side of Alabama. Dari, what are you going to do here?
When I first saw this line come out at 17, I thought that's the first half line. And I'm like, I'm taking that. So not only am I going to take that, but I'm also going to take Bama big here. I think, what they're saying with the, highest rated quarterback season ever, how crazy would it be if the top 3 finalists for the Heisman are all Alabama players? Harris, Jones, Smith. Yeah. That's how it could go. It's ridiculous. Their offense is at a whole nother level, better than anybody in football. And what's really happened that's really impressive is Saban has fixed their defense. Over the past month, they've really tightened it down. the defense, Gators defense is not that good. Bama's gonna kill them. I also like the over in this, which is like 74, 75 points. I think Bama may get to close to that on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think whoever is the quote-unquote best player from this game is certainly on the Alabama side, and maybe if Florida has an upset and it's Kyle Trask, probably has the inside edge on who ultimately ends up being the Heisman Trophy winner. Moving on to the ACC, probably the most interesting game in terms of playoff implications is a rematch here. Clemson against Notre Dame in Charlotte, North Carolina. Trevor Lawrence will be starting at quarterback this time. He was not the last time, which is a big reason why Clemson is a 10.5-point favorite over Notre Dame. Mike Griffith, who do you have here?
Well, first, I want to help Jeff out. I don't know what fancy calculators he's talking about, but by my math, I still have a better winning percentage. And secondly, Jeff wants the Ohio State treatment here. He wants to just take games off and be vaulted into the lead. I need to move north to Columbus for that, Jeff. Listen, I've got some inside intel here. I know some people at Clemson, as you guys know, after you cover teams and you get old, you know a lot of people. Clemson's sweating this. They're worried about Notre Dame. I think they should be. I do think Trevor Lawrence is magic. I do think that David Pollock's recent tweet about Trevor Lawrence being an outside candidate to seize the moment and win the Heisman, I believe that could happen. If Alabama dominates and Devontae Smith and Mac Jones split votes and Trask is awful again, then and Trevor Lawrence has a fantastic appearance against Notre Dame, I absolutely think that Trevor could sweep in and win this. I'm not predicting that he will. I predict he'll win this game, but I think Notre Dame will make this very uncomfortable for Clemson. I'm going to take Notre Dame to cover. I got Clemson winning 37-34 on something special that Trevor Lawrence does, because that's what he does. He does special things.
Mr. Centel, who do you have?
Yeah, I guess I'm gonna agree with Mike Griffith here on a couple of these things. I think Trevor will wear the cape, but I don't know how much better he can play than DJ Uiagalelei played in that first matchup on the road against Notre Dame. I think this 10.5-point line is very sporty, very interesting. I think Notre Dame will play within this line. I think Notre Dame will cover. I think Clemson will win. And I think Trevor Lawrence will do things that make the New York Jets want to reject any offers of multiple first-round picks for his services. I think that might be one of the best football games in the country, not just the Atlantic Coast Conference this weekend.
Yeah, the first time Clemson and Notre Dame played this season, Clemson, even though DJ Uiagalelei was great and probably every bit as good as Trevor Lawrence could have been in that game, Clemson couldn't run the ball. This Notre Dame defense is pretty good, very salty. I mean, they really shut out a North Carolina team over the final three quarters that just put up 700 yards of offense against Miami. I would absolutely love to pick Notre Dame this week. And if I were in first place in the standings like Mr. Griffith or in second place like Mr. Centel, I absolutely would. But I know I have games to make up. And I know Clemson wants to maybe look a little impressive here. So I'm going to take Clemson here minus the 10.5 solely from a standing standpoint. I'm terrified to death that Notre Dame is going to get a backdoor cover here. But I to the point Mike and Jeff have made, I think Trevor wants to go out there, make it a statement game, a prove it game, saying I am still, in fact, the best player in college football. So with that, I'm going to take Clemson and feel absolutely awful about it. Still puts the flow on the side of Notre Dame. Dari, who are you going with here?
Well, Clemson has a chip on their shoulder. I think they're out to prove something in this game. With Trevor back in the driver's seat, I think they're going to pour it on the Irish. Not as bad as when Bama gave it to them in the national title game several years ago, but I think it's going to be somewhat close than that. This line opened at 7 and quickly jumped up 3.5 points to 10.5. Big money's coming in on Clemson, so I'm going to follow that money, and I'm pretty confident that Clemson's going to whoop it on them this weekend.
So if that does happen, Dari, do you think Notre Dame still gets into the playoff with a bad loss to Clemson here?
Yes, especially with Florida. Florida's not even in the conversation anymore. Even if they win, I don't think they get in. But yeah, I think even if it doesn't matter what happens. I think the Irish will be put in there, regardless if they win or lose.
Yeah,
and even how bad they lose.
With Florida losing last week, with Texas A&M really not looking all that impressive over the last month, it's just hard to find a lot of teams. And as we move to the Big Ten here, Ohio State might be the biggest beneficiary of all of this. They've only played 5 games this season. They didn't look all that impressive in their one game against, I believe, a team with a winning record in Indiana, and now they get a chance to sort of make another statement in only their 6th game of the season. They're a 20.5-point favorite against Northwestern. That half point looms rather large. Mike Griffith, I know you're not a big Ohio State fan, but who are you going with here?
Yeah, well, the Big Ten has just changed the rules. They're only going to play a half of a game, and that's why the line's not even bigger.
Okay, so it's just a first half line.
No. I mean, that's all they're going to play. They don't have to play
okay.
4 quarters in the Big Ten anymore. They don't play a full season. They don't have to play full games. No, seriously though, I think this is a mismatch. Northwestern lost to a really bad Michigan State team, a really poor team. Mel Tucker stealing money up there, but he did beat Northwestern 29-20. The same Michigan State team that Ohio State beat 52-12. So that kind of gives you some idea of how it's a farce. This is an embarrassment for that league, and Ohio State's going to embarrass Northwestern to make sure that everybody's real impressed with how great they are. Justin Fields, he probably won't throw 3 interceptions in one game like he did when he played the only team with the winning record on his schedule this year. I'm going to take Ohio State to win 56-14.
Mr. Centel, are you following Mr. Griffith again here?
He doesn't want
to. Yeah. Can I go I sit here going, Mike, big money Griffith? I'm not going to start talking about the Georgia-Florida game in Jacksonville. I'm not going to start getting Georgia players injured in faux fictional game stories. I'm not going to tell folks to get off my lawn. But I am going to go with Mike Big Money Griffith. Ohio State is going to try and play 8 quarters if possible against Northwestern, so that will count twice. Saying that firmly tongue-in-cheek right there. If they play 8 quarters, maybe the NCAA will count them twice. Northwestern, Ohio State. Ohio State is one of the sleekest and fastest and most athletic teams in college football, and this is really one of those games where it's on full display. Wide receiver core for Ohio State, which will look like Alabama's wide receiver core of the last 2 years for the next 2 years. That's how good the Buckeyes are at receiver. I think they're going to put on a clinic, and I like the Buckeyes to win by about 30, 35 points.
Yeah, as much as I would love to pick Northwestern here, I just can't. I know Ohio State, they're rested, they're ready to go. They want to go out and make a statement. And this Northwestern team, the only way I see them really covering is if their offense is really able to gum up the game and slow it down, maybe make it a 28-14 or something like that. But I just don't see them doing that. I think this Ohio State team wants to play well, make a statement, say, hey, at least, well, we might not have the resume of it, at least based on talent, we are one of the 6 best teams in the nation, or 4 best teams in the nation, excuse me there. So with that in mind, it makes it a clean sweep in favor of the Buckeyes. Daria, you're going to go with the flow here and take Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game.
20.5 points is a lot to lay. And Northwestern has really good defense. They're averaging only giving up 15 points per game. But they haven't played an offense and talented team as Ohio State. I mean, the talent on these teams are at opposite ends of the spectrum. And I also think with Dabo's recent comments and shot at Ohio State, I think they're going to try to win this big. It's their last game of the season to try to make a statement with the polling out there. So with you, I'm going to take the Buckeyes to cover that big point spread.
Moving on, perhaps the strangest game of the week. So Washington and Oregon were unable to play last week, meaning Washington won the Pac-12 North. Washington is now unable to play again this week due to contact tracing and then not having a single offensive lineman. That means that Oregon is now going to play in the Pac-12 title game against an unbeaten USC team that has 3 wins in the final minute. This game will be played at the Coliseum in Los Angeles, and the Trojans are a 3.5-point favorite. Mike Griffith, who do you have in this total rat shamble of a game between Oregon and USC?
That's pretty funny, Connor. You really quacked me up. I'm going to have to go with the Trojans in this game. Oregon has lost to Cal and Oregon State in their last 2 meetings, so there are going to be some eager Beavers to get back on the field. But I just think the Trojans are just too much to overcome. I think they're going to come on strong and beat the Ducks 27-20. So I got USC covering the spread.
Jeff, who do you have here?
Wow. I think some of those jokes come through like a Trojan horse in the middle of our brains, and they pollute our minds, pollute our thoughts. Keeping this simple, keeping the laugh right out of this. USC, a lot of those big receivers that JT Daniels used to throw to that he's very close with are still in that program. I look for USC to win the Pac-12 faux cubic zirconian championship here this weekend and cover this line as well.
Again, I'm going to do what I did with Clemson Notre Dame here. I think USC is the better team. I think they're probably going to win this game. I love Keaton Slovis. Him and JT Daniels, if they got matched up in a bowl game, I think would be a ton of fun. I'm going to grin and bear it, but I think there's a case to be made for an upset brewing this week between Oregon and USC. Oregon, a little bit of a wildcat here. They've got the talent. It's just for whatever reason they haven't been able to put it all together here. I think they're going to run hard and try and find a spark through their running game. They've got talent on the defensive side there. Buffalo. You'd love to see USC and Georgia in a bowl game, but I think Oregon's going to upset them here. And even though they didn't win their division title, I think they're going to win the Pac-12 championship game. So with that in mind, Dari, the flow is still on the side of USC here. Who are you going with?
Little Friday night action, which I always love. And I love the Trojans here. So I'm going to take them. I think they're going to handle the business. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch on both sides of the ball. And the over is something to look at as well, just because I think a lot of points are going to be scored.
I would agree. The defense has been particularly bad this year in the Pac-12. Moving on, an AAC title game, a game that was supposed to be played last week but was not due to COVID. Cincinnati, there are some people out there trying to will them into a college football playoff contender. Quite frankly, I don't think we'll ever see a group of 5 team in the college football playoff as it is currently set up. Nevertheless, the Bearcats are a 10.5-point favorite over the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes. Mike Griffiths, who do you have in this AAC title game?
I might need to petition for you to pick ahead of me because you're just trying to catch me in the standings and you're cherry picking these games where you can make up ground, Connor. But this is tough because this was a game that was supposed to be played as a regular season game, and they said, you know what, forget it. Let's just play it in the title game. Advantage, disadvantage, I don't know. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win. Unfortunately, I know that's going to excite the athletic directors at Florida and Georgia Tech, who are just foaming at the mouth.
There we go.
The worst possible bowl game they can get and stick Georgia against Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl, which is probably what happens if chalk holds. So those athletic directors are excited. But I think that Tulsa will do just enough to cover the spread. So I'm going to say Cincinnati 20 and Tulsa 13.
Jeff Santel, who do you have up next?
Deviation here from Mike Big Money Griffith here. I like the Bearcats to win. I think they're one of the most well-coached teams in the land. I don't know why rival schools such as Auburn, potentially other schools down the line, you don't at least hear some of those names off that Cincinnati staff for potential plum jobs. I also like the Bearcats to cover against Tulsa this week. So there's a little bit of deviation there from Big Money Griffith right there. Bearcats win. Bearcats cover the 10.5 this weekend.
Yeah, I'm also going to ride with the Bearcats here. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game, which does scare me a little bit with this being a 2-score edge. But I just think this Cincinnati team is the best group of 5 team. I think they have a talent edge there. So I don't love it, but give me the Bearcats here, and it helps that Mike picked Tulsa. So we have a chance to make up some ground there. I'll put the flow on the side of Cincinnati. Dari, you're going to go with the flow here and pick the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Yeah, at 10.5, I'm taking Cincy. The lines moved a lot since it opened. It's now at 14.5. Who knows where it settles at? At the current line at 14.5, I'd probably take the points with Tulsa, just because anything over 2 touchdowns is probably a lot for Cincy to cover. But at 10.5, which what we're picking off of, I love Cincy. They've been outstanding all year long on both sides of the ball. One a very well balanced team. And I think their defense is going to get done. I actually think they'd cover that 20.5 against Ohio State is how good their defense is.
I think I agree there. I actually I know Ohio State's probably playoff bound. I'd love to see Ohio State and Cincinnati playing a game together. Maybe the Peach Bowl. Maybe we can make that happen. We can kick Georgia down to the Orange Bowl or in a game against USC. Our next game up on the list here is the Big 12 title game. It is Iowa State against Oklahoma. It is a rematch from a game played earlier this season that Iowa State won, but Oklahoma is a 5.5-point favorite. I'm going to give Mike the benefit of the doubt here, and Mr. Santel, you are going to go first this time. Who do you have, Iowa State or Oklahoma? The Sooners are a 5.5-point favorite.
Ooh, I'm going to take Iowa State in this one. I'm going to like that line as the difference in match 2 of the season. That was one of the most interesting, eye-opening games before the real college football team started playing this fall. I just like that Iowa State staff. That's another staff that you're sitting here trying to make some money on entertainment wagering or make some entertainment on sports wagering. Iowa State is a team that has knocked off a lot of heavies over the last few years. I don't consider the Sooners to be a heavy. I don't know if they've got everything in place with their defense, much less their quarterbacks and wide receivers this year. Give me Ohio State and that line there to cover.
I'm going to take Oklahoma here and not feel good about it. Part of the reason why is because I believe Mike is also going to take Iowa State and Jeff is taking Iowa State here. This Oklahoma team, while they haven't really played anybody of note since this Iowa State game, that was all the way back in, I believe, week 2 of the season, I think they've gotten better each week of the season. I trust Lincoln Riley. They've had some time to prepare for this game. I don't love that this is 5.5 here because I think Iowa State is absolutely going to keep this game close, but I think maybe a 37-30, 34-27, something in that range. Oklahoma wins by a touchdown and does just enough to cover here. So I'm going to take Oklahoma. Mike, I gave you third slot now. Who are you going to take, Iowa State or Oklahoma at 5.5?
Yeah, I mean, as far as championship games go, this is just an okay matchup. I knew we'd have to pick it sooner or later. I'm going to actually take Oklahoma to cover the spread here. You know, Iowa State lost to Louisiana Lafayette. I'm just the Big 12 to me. I'm not convinced. I think, you know, Spencer Rattler is coming on as a freshman. He's been getting progressively better. And so I like Oklahoma. I think it'll be a tight game. I know Iowa State burnt me a little earlier this year against Texas on that pick, but I'm going to take Oklahoma to win the rematch. Iowa State won 37-30 in Ames. This is neutral site. I'm going to take the Sooners to win by a touchdown over the Cyclones, 27-20.
That puts the flow on the side of Oklahoma here. Dar, are you going to go with the flow and take the Sooners?
Yeah, I'm taking the Sooners. You know Iowa State beat them earlier this year, and they've had a fantastic season. But they haven't won a conference title since 1912. I mean, there's a reason for that. 1912. I think Oklahoma salvages their season by closing out with a Big 12 championship. Lincoln Riley's going to dial up a game plan that leads them to a pretty comfortable victory.
So our final game of the week here, Sun Belt title game. Coastal Carolina, undefeated, the second highest ranked Group of 5 team in the country. If Cincinnati does get tripped up, there's a chance that they would potentially take that Peach Bowl spot, which would make Mike even more upset. Against the Louisiana Lafayette Ragin' Cajuns, a team that beat Iowa State earlier in the season, has just a single loss to this point in the year. Louisiana is a 3.5-point underdog. Jeff, who are you going with in this game?
What is this, guys? Is this the runner-up bowl for the South Carolina head coaching job? I think this was the interview candidates here. The Chanticleers here. Oh, man. Coastal Carolina. And then you got Napier trying to build something down there in Louisiana. I like Coastal Carolina to stay unbeaten and to be waving its finger proudly in the air like we're number one, we're the champion, much like Central Florida did a couple years back. Give me Coastal Carolina in this game.
I will go next. This is my lock of the week. I love Louisiana in here for a couple of different reasons. One, again, I think they're every bit as good as Coastal Carolina. Two, they had a week off before this game, whereas Coastal Carolina had to go and play Troy and come back in the final minutes just to win that game. I think there's maybe a little fatigue factor on the side of Coastal Carolina, especially because they scheduled that game against BYU a few weeks ago, whereas I think this Louisiana team is a little bit more rested. They know Billy Napier is going to be their coach going forward. I love Louisiana, not just to cover, but outright win the Sun Belt this week. Mr. Griffith, 3.5-point underdogs are those Ragin' Cajuns from Louisiana. Who are you going with here?
Yeah, I think you made a great case, Connor. You talked me into it. No, I was thinking Louisiana on the front end because of the Iowa State game, but also because Coastal Carolina has been playing that underdog card, and it's a little bit different when teams are shooting for you. And Coastal Carolina's got a big target on their back now. Louisiana, a team that hasn't gotten a lot of credit, that didn't get a lot of love for beating Iowa State. Nobody really talks about that. People are wondering, well, why is Iowa State ranked so high ahead of Georgia, actually, in the college football playoff, even though they lost to Louisiana, not Louisiana State, but Louisiana. So I think this is a prove-it game. I think Coastal Carolina's jumped the shark. They've had their moment of glory. I'm going to take Louisiana 27-20 over Coastal Carolina.
Dari, that puts the Flow on the side of the Raging Cajuns here. Who are you going to go with in the Flow?
How can you not take Coastal here? I mean, not only are they having a great season, this is their year. It's going to continue against the Raging Cajuns. Louisiana's been great. They're having a great year as well. I mean, they beat, 7th-ranked Iowa State at the beginning of the year back in September. The difference in this game is going to be the Black Swarm defense of Coastal Carolina. They're going to smother the Raging Cajuns, and they're going to control the clock. Just like every other time that they've played them, they have dominated the time of possession. I think that continues again, and they're going to be undefeated to end their regular season.
So that was our final pick of the week there. Before we get out of here, I just want to say thank you again to our friends that made this possible at RS Andrews. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric. You can trust them to handle all of those systems around your house. We're on the brink of the holiday season. Christmas is coming up. Hanukkah's already started. And it's nice to feel that warm, toasty air from a heating system that works the way it is supposed to. If you're afraid yours might not be working the way it should, like mine is currently not, or you got people coming over for the holidays and you're afraid that they won't be as comfortable as they should be, the peace of mind you deserve by getting your system tuned back up. Find RS Andrews at rsandrews.com. They will set in motion the process that they will take great care of you. They'll do more than satisfy you. They will put a big smile on your face this holiday season. It's what RS Andrews will do. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. Connor Riley, Jeff Sintel, Mike Griffiths, and Dari Paylero, we wish you a happy holidays. Fantastic run here at the end of the season. Hopefully we'll be able to get back and pick some of those bowl games, New Year's Six games, college football playoff games as well. I'm Connor Riley signing off for Dog Nation.